Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we've got another news video to discuss. We've got a signing to discuss, we've got a couple of waiver updates, we've got a couple of injury updates. We have a signing by a president of hockey ops in Vancouver. We have a new coaching change in New York. And then we also have trade rumors involving the Kings, the Capitals, the Canucks, and the Leafs. We'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Talking Channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank you for all of your support. I've never been able to do with all of you guys, so don't forget to subscribe so we can 250 subscribers now. I'm going to begin today's video off by discussing the one loan signing we've had over the past couple of days, and that was Corey Perry. We talked about this over the past little while. Corey Perry, who was terminated his contract by the Chicago Blackhawks. A lot of people thought that Perry did do something bad, but wasn't to the extent that he may need his contract terminated. There's still some talk out there that he may try and grieve his contract termination along with the NHLPA, or the NHLPA may just do that themselves. So there's still some talk about whether that's going to happen or not, or wrongful termination with the Hawks and the Cal Beach saga and all that stuff that's happened with them. They need to be due diligent with all the bad stuff that happens around the team. So they wound up terminating Perry. Recently he's gotten the vote of consent from the NHL. He doesn't need to, but he wanted to make sure that he was able to sign with another team. The NHL said they wouldn't stop him. So there's a lot of talk that he was going to sign in the next little while, and Corey Perry has signed. He signs a one-year league minimum deal for the rest of this year with the Edmonton Oilers. Now, I don't think this is too much of a surprise. There's a lot of talk about Perry going to a team like Toronto or Edmonton. Some people also thought that he might have wanted to go to a quieter city. Edmonton's probably not a quieter city, but it's a little bit quieter than Toronto, and there's a lot of talk that he does want to have another chance to win a Stanley Cup, and in Edmonton is going to have at least a shot. Edmonton is on a 13-game winning streak. They're doing fantastic right now, and Perry's going to be a fantastic depth addition for the Edmonton Oilers. Like we said, it's a one-year deal, $775. It's not a huge thing. It's just for the rest of this year. You know, early on in Chicago, before he was terminated, he was playing fantastic. He had 4 goals and 9 points in 16 games with the Chicago Blackhawks before being terminated. It was a -5 rating. Actually looked pretty good. Prior to that, last year with the Tampa Bay Lightning, he was 12 goals, 13 assists, 25 points in 81 games. Was a pretty decent point total there with the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's been a really good bottom 6 forward over the past couple of years. He can put up points in the bottom 6. He can play on like the 3rd or 4th line. He can also be a really hard player to play against, especially in the playoffs. So definitely, it's something that the Oilers could definitely use. And there was a lot of talk throughout the season so far. The Oilers could be looking for a solid bottom 6 forward, and they have found it. So this is a solid sign in my opinion. I'm not exactly sure if this was the best option for Perry if you wanted to go to a quieter market. Edmonton's definitely not a quiet market, but definitely it's a solid sign in my opinion. The Oilers get another solid depth scorer. That's another problem that the Oilers have had. They've had a lot of good contributions from guys like McDavid and Draisaitl, but at times this year their depth scoring has been lacking. So definitely adding a solid depth scorer like Perry will be a fantastic addition for them, and I think he'll be able to fit in extremely well with the Edmonton Oilers. So that's the loan signing. Perry signs in Edmonton. I know there's a lot of people who think that this is not an overly great signing for Edmonton, especially when they're playing so well right now, and I do think it could disrupt the chemistry a little bit, but we'll have to wait and see. So Perry signed in Edmonton. He's going to be a solid bottom 6 forward for them, and that saga is now over. Whether he files the grievance or not, it's still yet to be seen, but still, it's a really good sign there for the Edmonton Oilers, who were able to get a huge bottom 6 upgrade into Corey Perry. So very good stuff there for the Edmonton Oilers. However, we have seen 2 waiver placements yesterday on the waiver updates. Not exactly sure the outcome at this point in time. I don't know exactly what's happened between those 2 players. But we saw with the Perry signing, the Oilers need cap space, so they placed Erne on waivers with the purpose of placing him on the waivers to go to the minors. And then Montreal Canadiens also placed Mitchell Stevens on waivers. So not overly surprised. I think the Canadiens are getting a little bit healthier. They want to also try and get some more bodies into the forward group. So with that in mind, they wanted to try and send someone down, and Stevens wound up being the guy. Not overly surprised at this point in time. He's more of an AHL forward / spare forward. He's been able to get some NHL opportunities this year due to the Canadiens' vast amount of forward group injuries. So I'm not overly surprised he got a shot at NHL level, but I'm also not surprised he's being placed on waivers. Like I said, he's a decent 4th line center, but he's also more of a spare forward at NHL level or AHL forward, so not overly surprised the Canadiens placed him on waivers. And the Oilers placed Erne on waivers to sort of combat the Corey Perry signing. Not overly surprised. Perry's a much better bottom 6 forward than Erne. Erne is, so I'm not overly surprised that happened. I expect probably both of these guys to clear. Erne was a late acquisition by the Edmonton Oilers, signing him, I think it was close to the beginning of the season, so he wasn't signed for a very long time, and a lot of teams could have wound up signing him, so I would expect to probably wind up clearing. Maybe if there's a team out there who is suffering from a lot of injuries and needs some help in the forward group, they could try and take a chance on Erne, but I would expect him to probably clear. Same thing with Stephens. Like I said, he's more of an AHL forward at this point in time. I would expect him to probably clear too, so I don't expect either one of these guys to wind up being claimed. Both these guys are decent bottom six forwards who can't play in the bottom six, but unless there's a team out there who really is desperately in need for some forward help, I would expect both of these guys to clear. So those are two waiver updates over the past couple of days. Erne in Edmonton, Stephens in Montreal, both have been placed on waivers. Don't know the exact outcome, but I wouldn't be overly shocked if both these guys wound up being cleared, so we'll have to wait and see on that. Going over to an injury update here for the past couple of days. So as we said, the injury update over the past couple of days, Owen Tippett has a lower body injury, is out for an unknown period of time. Alex Killorn has a knee injury and is out for the next 6 weeks. Connor Dewar is out for a week-to-week period of time, and Marc-Andre Fleury has an upper body injury and is out for an unknown period of time. So those are some pretty bad injury updates. But then we saw a long list of guys here. Joel Edmundson, Washington, Brett Liaison in Anaheim, Josh Anderson in Montreal, Dennis Gilbert in Calgary, Tyler Pitlick in New York Rangers, Tyson Barrie in Nashville, Joshua Norris in Ottawa, Radko Gudas in Anaheim, Jacob Markstrom in Calgary, Kuznetsov, Samuelsson, and Jokiharju in Buffalo, Forbert, Carlo, and Poitras in Boston, all be cleared to play, and I think all of them were able to get back in the game action over the past couple of days. So lots of really great injury updates there from the past couple of days. Going over to a couple of other injury updates, Ben Shaw's undisclosed injury, out for an unknown period of time. Ilya Lyubushkin has an upper body injury, out for an unknown period of time. Svechnikov has an upper body injury, out for an unknown period of time for Carolina. Kubalik has a hip injury, out for a day-to-day period of time. Troy Stecher has a lower body injury, and Carson Seuss has a hand injury. Both are going to be out for probably about the next month and a half, so that's really bad injury updates. Gabe Vilardi has an undisclosed injury, and out day-to-day period of time. Well, Nick Foligno in Chicago, Bowen Byram in Colorado, Semyon Varlamov in New York, and Nick Blankenberg in Columbus are all cleared to play. Blankenberg, I think, might have been sent down to the minors, while for Varlamov, Byram, and Foligno, they shall be able to get back in the game action in the not too distant future. So a lot of really good injury updates there over the past couple of days for a lot of these NHL teams. Going over to a quick extension that's happened over the past couple of days, Jim Rutherford, who is the president of Hockey Ops in Vancouver, has reportedly signed a 3-year extension to remain president of Hockey Ops with the Vancouver Canucks. It's a very good signing there for the Canucks. I think since his arrival, a lot of people started to question what he was doing as GM of the Vancouver Canucks, but I think after the Canucks' success from this year, I don't think anyone's questioning what he's doing right now. Rutherford's put together a fantastic team. This team has been absolutely lethal, and I think a lot of Canucks fans are extremely happy with the Rutherford. So with that in mind, I think they're okay with this. A 3-year extension for Rutherford to remain president of Hockey Ops and remain being able to construct this team. If the Canucks don't win the Cup this year, they'll have a shot either next year or the year after. They're building something special there in Vancouver. So I'm not really surprised that Rutherford was able to get a 3-year contract extension from the Vancouver Canucks, and he'll remain president of Hockey Ops for the next little while. We also had a coaching change for the New York Islanders. After a 4-game losing streak that saw them go a little bit farther out of the playoffs race for the New York Islanders, they wound up firing Lane Lambert and brought in Patrick Waugh as their new head coach. So Lambert was the head coach of the New York Islanders for, I think it was like a year and a half. I think this was his second full season at the NHL level. He did have assistant coaching career elsewhere prior to being the Islanders head coach. He was assistant coach with Nashville from 2011 to 2014, assistant coach with Washington from 14 to 18, and then was assistant coach with the Islanders from 18 to 22. When they released Trotz, or Trotz stepped down from the New York Islanders head coaching job, they wound up putting Lane Lambert in as new head coach. He's been the coach over the past year and a half, and so far he led them to the playoffs last year, and they made the playoffs, wound up being ousted in 6 games by Carolina Hurricanes. And then this year, so far, they're on the bubble. They're not a guaranteed team to make the playoffs, but they're also not completely out of it yet either. So I think Lou Lamoriello thought that this team needed some sort of a new voice. They needed someone new behind the bench, so they fired Lane Lambert after the 4-game losing streak, sort of following out of the playoffs a little bit, and they brought in Patrick Waugh. Now, Waugh does have coaching experience before. He's the former NHL goaltender. He did coach before from, I think, 2013 to 2016 with the Colorado Avalanche, but then they had a falling out. I think the reason why he left the Colorado Avalanche organization is he wanted more input on the roster, and he wasn't getting it. So so he wound up leaving. I think he's coached in a couple of junior teams since then, but he hasn't been an NHL head coach since then. So he's been out of a head coaching job for the last 7 years, and now he's back into being a head coach. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't think this is something that a lot of people were expecting. Patrick Roy has a strong personality, as does Lou Lamoriello, and given how Roy ended his tenure in Colorado, a lot of people were surprised by Lamoriello hiring Roy. So it's going to be interesting to see how those two fit together, but it's going to be a really interesting deal for the New York Islanders, as I'm not sure if it's an interim tag or if he signed a new contract, but they do have a new head coach, and it is Patrick Roy. So it's a little bit surprising. I don't think anyone saw this coming. I think Lambert could have been fired. There were a lot of talks early in the season that he was going to be fired, but I think bringing in Patrick Roy is a completely different story, and I'm a little bit surprised that happened. So it's going to be interesting to see. Love to hear your guys' thoughts on what you think about this coaching change. Is this the right move for the Islanders? Will Roy be able to coach them into the playoffs, or are the Islanders still a team who's destined to miss? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on this coaching change down in the comment section below. And lastly, going over to a couple of trade rumors from the past couple of days. First, Washington Capitals. I've seen a couple of trade rumors over the past couple of days. First, Evgeny Kuznetsov was recently moved down to the fourth line, I think over the weekend in one of their games. And according to a couple of reports that I've seen from some of the Washington News, that could be them trying to make some sort of a last-ditch effort to try and get Kuznetsov going. Apparently, they said that he's not going very much on the Ovechkin's line right now, and they sort of really wanted to try and get some sort of a new fit. But there is a very likely possibility that Kuznetsov could still wind up being moved. Now, I think that if this doesn't work out and Kuznetsov can't really be trusted on the fourth line, there's a very likely chance that they may try and move him by the March 8th trade deadline, but it very likely probably won't happen given his cap hit, given his term on his contract. A lot of people do think this will probably be more of an off-season or even draft day move. Kuznetsov's a solid second, third line center in my opinion. He can still do really well. I just don't think he's working well with Washington anymore. I think a fresh start could do him good. I just don't think there's any teams out there who would be willing to take that. Now, going to the offseason, he's entering the final year of his deal. I think the Caps will be willing to retain half of his salary if they were able to get rid of him. I do think that's a very likely possibility. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. So it may not happen this point in time, but it seems like Kuznetsov is on his last strings with Washington. Whether it's this year, before the deadline, or in the offseason, there's a very likely chance Kuznetsov will get moved by Washington Capitals. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Another one is Joel Edmundson, Washington. He's been in and out of the lineup this year due to injuries for the Washington Capitals, as he has been over the past couple of years with a team like Montreal. But he's also entering the final year of his deal right now. He's pending UFA at the end of the year. There's a very likely chance that the Capitals don't bring him back. And if the Capitals are a little bit on the outside looking in, and they do want to possibly move a piece or two who they're probably not bringing back for the season, maybe they wind up considering moving Joel Edmundson. Edmondson's a really good third pair defenseman. Could be a really good addition for a lot of teams' bottom pairs. I do think there would be a ton of interest if Edmundson was a guy who wound up being available. There's a lot of interest in Edmundson last year on the deadline, also in the offseason this year before the Capitals wound up acquiring him for, I think it was a 3rd and 5th round pick. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. I'm not saying Edmondson's guaranteed to get moved. I think the Capitals would rather keep him and go on a playoff run rather than move him. But it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Edmondson's a really good third pair defenseman. He may not stay long term in Washington, so if they do wind up being a little bit on the outside looking in come playoff time, maybe they do wind up considering moving Edmundson instead of keeping him for a playoff run. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. But Kuznetsov, it seems like he's on his last strings in Washington. Very likely he gets moved, whether it be at this year's trade deadline or the more likely option in the offseason or maybe at the draft. That's a very likely possibility. And Edmundson also seems like he's going to be moved possibly by the Washington Capitals if they're not overly good at the trade deadline. And they could be a lot of teams interested in a solid third pair defenseman like him. So those are two situations we're going to have to watch out for. Next, going over to the LA Kings. I've seen this from a couple of recent reports from a couple of different sources, and there's a lot of people out there who think that the LA Kings could have some significant trade interest in a guy like Jake Allen from the Montreal Canadiens. It's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but we know that they're not overly fond with having a guy like David Rittich as their backup. We know there was a very likely chance that in season they were going to make some sort of a goalie move. There was a lot of talk they could go after a starter, but with Talbot doing pretty good so far this year, I'm not sure if they really would want to get a new starter, just sort of bump him down to the backup role. So I could see him try and roll with Talbot, but with Copley not starting out the season overly well and now being out of the season due to injury, and now having Greg as a backup, there's a very likely chance they could try and go after a goaltender who can at the very least be a tandem goaltender to Cam Talbot. Now, if they went after Allen, it wouldn't be an overly bad deal. They would have to try and make the cap work. They are a cap team, and Allen does make $3.3 million, so it would be a difficult situation to work out cap-wise, but I think this will be a fantastic fit. Allen's a very good, versatile goaltender starter, he can work as a 1B goaltender. I don't think he'll be a player to upset Talbot and take his starting role. I think Talbot's pretty locked into his starting role if Allen's brought in as the backup, but he could also be a guy who sort of takes some of the starts off of Talbot throughout the regular season and sort of keeps him healthy for the playoffs. So that could be a really good, interesting thing there for the Kings. And if they do make the playoffs and Talbot does get injured in the playoffs, Allen could be a guy who steps in and be a really good backup goaltender for him. So I can see why there would be a really good fit there. The Canes, it seems like, want a draft pick. My guess would be something like either a second-round pick and a decent level prospect, or maybe a first-round pick they could be asking for. Not exactly sure what they would want for Allen. He's had a decent season, but he's not had a fantastic season. I could see the Kings team try and move maybe like a second-round pick and a decent prospect. They have a plethora of prospects too, so they can move like a second-round pick and a decent prospect for Allen. And if Talbot does wind up walking as a free agent in the offseason, they still have Allen, who's assigned for this year and next year too. So this could be a really good deal, in my opinion, for the LA Kings. Not exactly sure what the particular asking price would be, but they do have a couple of second-round picks over the next couple of years. And like I said, a ton of young prospects that they could intrigue the Montreal Canadiens with. And Allen would not be a fantastic 1A starter, but it would definitely be a fantastic 1B and would be able to sort of balance out the starts between him and Talbot throughout the regular season. And then Talbot could be a playoff starter, and if he was to get injured, then they could turn to Allen for a really good solid thing. Because if Talbot gets injured in the playoffs right now, you turn to David Rittich, and that's really not overly fantastic. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but there's been a lot of link between the LA Kings and Jake Allen over the past little while, and I can see why there would be a lot of linkage, and I would definitely think that there's a very likely chance there that Allen could definitely go to the LA Kings. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but expect the LA Kings to be a team who's also interested in Jake Allen. There's a lot of talk right now that Allen will be moved probably before the deadline. It's just a matter of where he's going to go and what teams are going to meet the Canadiens' asking price. And I think the Kings, with their plethora of prospects, a solid pick maybe or two, and need for an upgrade in the goaltending side, maybe not at the starting position, but also at the backup, I think they could definitely look at a guy like Allen. So I think the fit's really good. I think they have their assets to pull off a trade. It'll be interesting to see if the Kings are able to pull Allen out of Montreal. Then going over to the Toronto Maple Leafs, there have been a lot of talk from Elliot Friedman over the past little while stating that the Leafs may not be buyers this year. And that is a little bit of a surprising statement, but when you start to dig a little bit deeper, you can sort of see why he would say something like that. Now, the Leafs have not done overly well over this year. They've been a really good team over the past couple of years, but so far this year, it hasn't been overly fantastic. They're a decent team, no doubt, and I think they should still be a playoff team, even though some people do think maybe they won't be a playoff team. But I do think they're a playoff team in my eyes. Now, are they a team who's going to be destined to go to the Cup final? With the Eastern Conference the way it's looking right now, probably not. I mean, you've got the Rangers who are looking good, the Bruins who are looking good, the Panthers who are looking good, and even over the past couple of games, you have the teams like the Devils, who, if they got healthy, would be a better team than them. The Red Wings look like a really good team. You can never count out the Bolts. The Islanders now with Patrick Waugh, they could be looking like a better team. So the East is going to be a gauntlet this year just to make the playoffs, not even just to make it through the playoffs. So the Leafs may not be in the best position to go on a Stanley Cup playoff run this year. So if that's the case, why would they go and spend a lot of assets? They don't have too much of assets. They don't have a whole bunch of draft picks. They only have a couple of really good prospects. So why would they send all of those picks and prospects off to get upgrades where it doesn't look like they will be a huge Stanley Cup contender this year? So Elliot Friedman said that they're probably thinking about this longer term and that they may not be buyers this year, which I think is a possibility. Now, I'm not going to say I'm not going to buy anything, but I think with them now having Nylander locked up, they have Matthews locked up, I think there's a very likely chance that Marner gets done. I think Tavares gets done at a lower cap hit next year. So with all those in place, they probably will have another tough year next year, sort of around with the roster. But then I think in 2 years' time, when Tavares and Marner's new deals kick in, they'll probably have a little bit of an easier time to work around the cap and sort of make moves and sort of get a little bit of a better blue line. So there's going to be an interesting thing there, but I do think that there's a very likely chance this Leafs team does not buy. I do think they could still buy. I think they would possibly still add a piece or two, but it will only be for like a 4th or 5th round pick. They're not going to do anything drastic. I think if they could move like maybe a lower end piece or maybe something off their roster to maybe try and get a little bit of an upgrade, especially on the blue line, I think they'll definitely be willing to do that. But I don't think it will be an overly huge upgrade. I don't think they'll be moving any first round picks or top end prospects this year for a solid player if they're not going to be looking at themselves as Stanley Cup contenders. So I think that at least could possibly not be buyers this year, at least not huge buyers. Maybe they buy a piece or two, but it doesn't seem like they're going to be breaking the bank to try and make the playoffs and try and win a Stanley Cup. And if they make the playoffs, make a run to the Cup final, good for them, but it doesn't seem like the Leafs are a team this year is going to add a ton to try to make a huge run to the Stanley Cup final. The other team we're going to be talking about here is a team who could possibly be making a huge push for a Stanley Cup playoff run, and that is the Vancouver Canucks. Now, the Canucks have had a fantastic season. They're top in the league. I don't think anyone saw this coming. They've been a fantastic, dominant team this year. Now, on the recent 32 Thoughts podcast, Erne was talking about Vancouver Canucks, and he says that he thinks that they have a list of about 4 or 5 players who they may try and target before a deadline, who would be fantastic top 6 forward upgrades for the Vancouver Canucks. And 2 players Freeman openly linked that he thinks that are on that list for Vancouver Canucks are Jake Guentzel and Lindholm. Now, Guentzel's a very fantastic top 6 forward, elite level goal scorer, can hit 40 to 50 goals on any given season. He's fitting extremely well with Crosby, so it's not a guarantee he gets moved. It's not even a guarantee he doesn't even sign an extension with the Penguins, but there's a possibility with the Penguins hovering around the playoff mark that if they do wind up being sellers, Guentzel could be on the market, and a lot of people do, including Elliot Freeman, think that Guentzel could be a guy who goes to Vancouver. The Canucks GM staff, which is Rutherford and Alvin, are both former Penguins. They like to bring in former Penguin players and coaches. Talkett's a former Penguin, Lafferty is a former Penguin, the Smith is a former Penguin. They have a lot of former Penguins on the Vancouver Canucks. It would not be overly surprising to see him go after a guy like Jake Guentzel. Now, the asking price would be high, and I'm not even sure if the Penguins would right now be willing to move Guentzel, but I could definitely see him have an interest in upgrading their top 6 with a guy like Jake Guentzel. Lindholm's another really good addition. He could be a fantastic two-way center on the second line for the Vancouver Canucks. Flames and Canucks have already hooked up on a deal earlier this year with the Zadorov deal, so it'll be a fantastic addition there for the Vancouver Canucks. Now, will the Flames be willing to move him there? Not exactly sure about that, and the asking price once again will be a pretty high asking price, but it seems like according to Elliot Freeman, they're not willing to move top-end prospects like Karamatke and Willander at this point in time. They may be able to willing to move some other guys, maybe like a Podkolzin. I've even some people say Höglander, although I think that's a little bit of a stretch. I think Höglander's been a really good addition there in the bottom 6 for Vancouver, but there are a couple of other young players out there who I think the Canucks will be willing to move. I even think they'll be willing to move their first-round pick, but it doesn't sound like they're willing to move Karamatke and Willander, especially for a rental, but even for a guy with term, it doesn't seem like they're overly willing to move one of those guys. So it's going to be interesting to see. I don't exactly know how they'll pull it off, but it seems like they have their sights set on a top 6 forward. They have about 4 or 5 players they're going to try and target before a deadline, and it seems like Guentzel and Lindholm are 2 guys who are on that list and they'll be willing to target. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for, but I said the Canucks to sort of go all in this year to some extent and to try and improve their team to make an even more lethal top 6 forward group on that team. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this down in the comment section below. That's what I'm going to talk about for today. What do you think about the Canucks? Do they add a top 6 forward? Could it be Lindholm? Could it be Guentzel? Is there another guy who you think could be on that 4 or 5 player list that the Canucks have that they could try and target? Definitely have to hear your guys' thoughts on that. Do you think that the Toronto Maple Leafs are not going to be buyers this year? They're not doing overly well this year. There's a very likely chance they could wind up being maybe not sellers, but maybe they just like stand pat at the deadline, or maybe just make a small move or two. It's definitely possible. I do think with the Leafs and where they are at right now, it might be better to just wait and leave some assets for future. So that's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. Could Allen go to LA? I think it would be a fantastic fit. Allen would be a fantastic 1B goaltender in LA. Would be a fantastic backup to Talbot, and could also be signed for not only this year but next year too. So that would be a fantastic fit in my opinion if he was to go to LA. Could the Capitals move Edmundson or Kuznetsov? I could definitely see Edmundson be moved, especially if the Capitals are not doing overly well come trade deadline time. Kuznetsov is a little bit more difficult, but I think it could be a fantastic draft day move for the Washington Capitals. So it's going to be an interesting situation to watch out for. And lastly here, what do you think about the Roy coaching change in New York, the Rutherford signing in Vancouver, and then the injury updates, waiver updates, and the Perry signing? Definitely have to you guys thoughts on all of that down in the comment section below. But that's not what we're talking about for today. I'm going to tell you this video, and if you're later, and subscribe down below. Thank you for all your support. I'll never be able to do with all of you guys. Don't forget to subscribe so we can reach 50 subscribers. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that. So check that out. Leave links down in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for next video. See you guys soon.